What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And today I'm very happy to be talking about the new 6-episode miniseries that's continuing on the Tales of series in the Star Wars world. And that is the animated series titled Tales of the Underworld, which comes from the mind once again of Dave Filoni, the prodigal son of Star Wars and George Lucas. And when I saw the trailer for this initially and when I saw the poster, I was incredibly excited. So far in this series of kind of offbeat storylines that we have these different characters in different places, we've had Tales of the Jedi, which focused on Count Dooku and Ahsoka Tano, and then we got the Tales of the Empire that was on Morgan Elsbeth as well as Barriss Offee. And here we are now getting Tales of the Underworld, which focuses 3 episodes on Asajj Ventress, who of course is the assassin Sith-esque character that works underneath Count Dooku during the events of the Clone Wars. Her character has gone on to appear in books and comics and in recent years in the world of animation, of course in the Clone Wars, but also in things like Star Wars The Bad Batch. And when she appeared in The Bad Batch, a lot of people were a little bit confused because if you've read the books, spoiler alert, she ends up dying. And so there was a lot of question of like, okay, is that book no longer canon? And here we are with a storyline with Asajj Ventress that takes place in between the events of that book, specifically Dark Disciple and the events of Bad Batch, giving us a little bit of that expansion of what's going on with her character after the events of the Clone Wars as we move towards, again, her appearance in the Bad Batch. But in and of itself, this kind of just shows us a snippet in time for her character. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. The other 3 episodes you have here are on Cad Bane, of course, the bounty hunter that was introduced in the Clone Wars animated series, who has gone on to appear in things like The Bad Batch, as well as in things like the Book of Boba Fett as well in live action, which was pretty awesome. So here we actually get 3 episodes that predate the events of the Clone Wars as we see him become the bounty hunter that we all know and love. So going into this season, I was pretty excited just simply because you have 2 really big fan favorite Star Wars characters that are from the world of animation in Star Wars primarily, who have become, again, big fan favorites. People love Asajj Ventress and Cad Bane. I think they're some of the coolest characters in modern Star Wars, and I think without a doubt when I heard that they were going to be the characters we focused on here, like a lot of Star Wars fans, it seemed like the right direction to go in. And when it comes down to Star Wars animation, between the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Bad Batch, and just all the various in-between things we've gotten, like Tales of the Underworld and the other Tales of series, the animated world of Star Wars, more often than not, gives us some of the best Star Wars on screen. My favorite Star Wars show is Star Wars Rebels, and I think what Dave Filoni has been able to do alongside the very talented animators and storytellers over at Lucasfilm is really utilize the medium of animation to create some incredible Star Wars storytelling, and this show is no different, following along in that Clone Wars animated style, and again, just expanding on these characters that we've grown to love in this format of Star Wars storytelling. And so the first 3 episodes, like I already mentioned, focus on Asajj Ventress, and I thought they were great episodes, really enjoyed them, and I was actually surprised to have it jump right into events right after the books, where, like I mentioned, she dies. And I think that that's something that may confuse some people who have not read the books and don't really know what happens with her character outside of the Clone Wars, but I do think that the show for the most part gives you enough information. I was watching with my wife who has not read that book, and so I gave her the context of what was going on, and I mentioned to her I feel like there's going to be some people who go into it that are a little bit confused, who maybe haven't dived into that other supplementary material. But yeah, I really enjoyed the Asajj Ventress episodes. I thought they had some of the best action between the 6 episodes that we have here, and I think it's an interesting kind of duality that you have between Ventress's episodes and Cad Bane's episodes, because Ventress is here post Clone Wars. She's no longer working under the Emperor, working under Count Dooku. She's no longer really seeking this life of evil, if you will, and we find her in a place where she is letting go of her role as part of the Separatist army during the Clone Wars. We're finding her in a place where she's letting go of the role of being this power-hungry bad guy. And so when you get to Cad Bane's episodes, the flip side of it is that we're seeing him struggle with the notion of letting go, which ultimately corrupts him to the point of becoming the Cad Bane that we know and love as a badass bounty hunter with absolutely no care for anybody else when you get into the animated stuff. So I thought that the duality of these two characters and the two versions of their stories, I thought really added to the overall thematic elements of this season that definitely gave this season its own identity amidst the other Tales of Star Wars shows. But yeah, I really love the Asajj Ventress episodes. It was great to see Nika Futterman come back to voice the character. I think she does such a great job in this role. And I think Ventress is such a complex character because, again, I think if you just watch the Clone Wars, she just seems like, you know, a ruthless bad guy who at times lives in the world of the gray, at times can find herself not necessarily aligning with the rest of the bad guys, but ultimately is a character that is kind of seeking, I don't want to say attention, but definitely seeking approval and wants to grow in her strengths. So in order to do that, oftentimes is just a conniving bad guy. But when you get to something like the Bad Batch, if you're just watching Star Wars, and you see her as this character who wants to help Omega in that show and is a little bit different than the version of the character we saw in the Clone Wars, you may wonder how she became that. And I think that this show does a little bit more to expand upon it if you haven't read the books, to kind of see how her character has changed since the events of the Clone Wars. And again, how the thematic elements of her episode are letting go of who she was before. Going into the Cad Bane episodes though, you have Corey Burton returning to voice the character, and I think his voice is just iconic as the character. I was so happy when he appeared in live action in the Book of Boba Fett and they had him come back to voice the character, even though there was another actor utilizing the makeup and the practical effects to make the character come to life in live action. And just, yeah, I thought that Cad Bane's episodes were interesting, not only in the fact that, again, thematically they kind of are the opposite end of what's happening in Ventress's episodes, but also because you have a completely different tone here as well. Ventress's episodes feel far more in line with the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch, feels a little bit more like it has its foot in the fantasy, pulpy, sci-fi, Star Wars element. And in the case of Bane's episodes, you have something here that's a little bit more Western feeling. His character in general has always felt like a Western-esque character. So it was nice to have Bane's episodes kind of have that classic cops and robbers kind of vibe to them. Everything about them, the musical score in those episodes, the tone, the look of it, the sound effects, very much made it feel like an old Western. And so it was really nice to see them have these 3 episodes that focus on 2 iconic Star Wars characters that I think that they really elevated the material around. I think for the most part, they do a good job of expanding upon these characters in a fun way. I could definitely say I like Tales of the Underworld a lot more than Tales of the Empire, which is a series I still enjoyed, but I think the 2 characters we're focusing on here are far more compelling, and the stories they gave them here in this season are far more compelling. And I would argue that if you look at Tales of the Jedi, I think the 3 episodes around Count Dooku are the best because it's giving us new information while also kind of playing in an area that we're at least somewhat familiar with. Whereas with Ahsoka, my biggest criticism of her inclusion in that Tales of the Jedi series was the fact that she's a character that we've gotten so much of in the Clone Wars and Rebels and now with her own show, that Tales of the Jedi for me didn't really expand too much on her character because so much has already been done in other stories. Whereas I feel like Tales of the Underworld had an advantage of expanding upon 2 characters that people don't have an abundance of knowledge on. There is a mystique around them in the other things that they're in. So to kind of get to peel the curtain back a little bit more in windows of their life that we aren't really familiar with, ultimately made Tales of the Underworld probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite, in the realm of these Tales of Star Wars series. So with all that said, animation wise, I thought it was beautiful. Action wise, I thought it was great. Tonally, I really enjoyed it. And again, I really like that thematic duality that the 2 parts of the season have that really elevated the overall experience for me. And then the last thing I want to mention here in terms of negatives, because mostly I really enjoyed these 6 episodes. I found them to be a lot of fun. But if there was anything I had any gripes with, I would say that Ventress's episodes had an element that had to do with Quinlan Vos, which won't surprise anybody who is familiar with the book Dark Disciple and more around Ventress's storyline. And I feel like they could have expanded a little bit more on the Quinlan Vos stuff. I feel like they didn't do enough with that. There is a reasoning that is kind of given right out of the gate in the first episode, but I do feel at a certain point it is a central piece to her journey in these 3 episodes. that by the time we get to the end didn't necessarily feel like it was fully resolved. It kind of just felt like it was left open in the air, which on one hand could lead to more storytelling around Ventress, but on another hand, as just a 3-episode arc, didn't leave me kind of feeling a little underwhelmed just around the Quinlan Vos element of it. And then when it comes down to the Cad Bane stuff, I would definitely say that came down to a little bit more of a satisfying ending, but there was a couple of things here and there and a couple of side characters that I wish were expanded upon a little bit more, that again, I feel like because there's 3 episodes, they kind of have to breeze through a couple of things and kind of give you the cliff notes of certain moments just to kind of give you the general idea of what these 3 episodes is about. And I would almost say, moving forward with the Tales of series, that I'd rather longer episodes. Even if it is just still 6 episodes, I would rather have 25 to 30 minute episodes of these characters with these 3 episodes to really be able to tell us a little bit of a meatier story. On one hand, I appreciate that they're shorter because it's a quick watch, but on another hand, as a Star Wars fan who wants more and more and more, there is a part of me that wishes that we could have had just that little bit more and more and more. This was a great way to spend Star Wars Day and watching some Star Wars. I look forward to expanding my knowledge on more Star Wars stuff as we get more and more in the coming months and years. But a big question to you guys, are you planning on checking out Tales of the Underworld? If you already did you like it? Did you not like it? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below. So a big thanks to you guys for watching, and may the Force be with you.